Hi everybody, Patrick here from EngineeringShock.com and electroniclessons.com. This is the third and final video in my series about my mini solar tracker DIY electronics kit. In the last video we assembled the sensor board, our motor driver, and our main board interface, and we tested it. So in this video I'm going to show you how to put it together. Now, feel free to change it up as you see fit. This is just some tips on. This is just a video that'll show some tips as to how I went about it. But for those who are more mechanically inclined out there, and I'm sure there are many of you, you might be able to come up with some alternatives. Now, the main problem with this is that the motor itself, the head, is very small and hard to deal with. So I rely heavily on my glue gun. But you do have some alternatives. Regardless, the first thing we want to do is find a piece of wood or a piece of particle board. I found some particle board. It doesn't come with the kit, but what we want to do is shave off, I'd say about a centimeter and a half at the end, so that we can double up, so that when we put our motor on the end, it's not flush with the board, it's aiming upwards like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a little slice off there, and then I'm going to glue it onto the board just a little bit further back so that there is a second layer there. That's the first step I'm going to take. Then I'm going to glue my my main PCB and my motor to the board. But we'll get to that in a minute. First things first, let's cut off that little piece. What I'm going to do now, as you can see, I have actually placed the secondary layer on here. I'm going to put a little bit of hot glue on my particle board. Again, it depends on. I cut my particle board to fit the main board lengthwise. I'm going to put a dab here, 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 and here to keep it in place. When I'm done that, and the glue is dried, I'm going to put the motor on at an angle, making sure that it's not tilted left or right, and I'm going to let that glue settle. And after that glue settled, then we'll worry about the sensor board. As you can see, thanks to the help of my trusty glue gun, I have mounted my board and my motor on an angle, my stepper motor. Now, the top, this is important. Well, it's not really all that important, but it's helpful. Make sure, you can do this with your fingers or with a little pair of pliers, gently make sure that the flat side is facing the outside of the board and it's not tilted on an angle. It'll help for when you mount your sensor board. Now, what you can do is you can just use glue and glue on your sensor board directly like that, but what I suggest doing, and this is where really you can use your own imagination, because again, I'm not very mechanically inclined. I love my electronics to death, but when it comes to doing mechanical things, I'm pretty much useless. In this case, what I did was I've created a little piece of wire here using some of the included thick stuff, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to solder that into the back of my main board so that there's a little thing protruding, and that will help to hold it, and then I'm going to add some glue to fasten it again. So I'm going to solder that into place right now, and we're going to try to mount it with this and a little bit of glue. Once that's mounted, we're going to add the ground stopper that acts to work with the whiskers. Just wanted to quickly show it off. It might be hard to see from here, but I made a little holder that should fit on the front of my motor gear. But it's not going to be enough. Once I put it on there, I'm going to have to probably use some pliers to add some pressure so it actually latches on. And then I'm just going to add a bit of glue just to make sure that it's on there solidly. This is probably the most difficult part. On my other version, there was a few times where the sensor board fell off. So you have to use your imagination, use your intellect to find different ways of making sure that that is going to stay on without ever falling off. Once we're done that, and we're going to again add our ground line for the whiskers, and we'll run a test. Now that it's on there, you can test it. You can turn on power. What I've done is I've added a cable tie, not included with the kit, but I've added a cable tie just to keep things neat and tidy. I should have waited because we still have to add our stopper. Now this stopper is a little tricky, but it should be relatively easy to do. What it requires is one of your last big pieces of wire be essentially folded up like a V and soldered or glued to the back of the motor, and then we connect a wire between the bottom of the stopper and ground, and we can either use the ground on the sensor board or ground on the main board. I'm going to use the ground on the main board. Now the point of this is when the motor turns too far one way, the whisker will touch the stopper, which is connected to ground, which will send a signal back to the microcontroller, telling it it's too far one way or the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shape this. I'm going to show you how it's shaped before I actually glue it on. So just give me 1 minute. So as you can see, it kind of looks like a V with a flat edge at the bottom. The flat edge is because we're going to mount it to the back of the motor. What you need to do is move these wires out of the way gently. Put a huge glob of glue in there, making sure not to touch the gear head, and then have this ready underneath the interface wires between the sensor board and the main board, and have it stand up kind of like this on a not a 45-degree angle, but not straight up either. So you want to have it sitting flat on the board, back like this. And so when the motor turns, it'll hit these. The whiskers will hit the stopper. So we don't have to put the wire on just yet. Just make sure that you have this placed strongly on the back of the motor via hot glue or however you want to mount it yourself. Next, after we have this mounted properly, we'll solder the wire on quickly, and then we'll run a final test. In case you can't see them, here's stopper 1, here's stopper 2, and what I've done is I've put a wire through my cable tie and soldered it to one of the stoppers, because the stopper is interconnected. So I soldered a wire here to this stopper, put the wire through the cable tie, and what I'll do is I'll use one of the ground pins. I can use one of the ground pins on the main board. For instance, on the prototyping area, one of the bottom pins we talked about before in the second video, we can connect it to the lower rightmost pin, labeled GND, or we can use one of the grounds on the ports, labeled GND. Up to you. I'm going to be connecting it right here. So that's ground. After we're done that, we can test it. Now, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Can be found through engineeringshock@hotmail.com is our email address, or you can message us through eBay. Up to you. electroniclessons.com. So let me solder that in place and we'll run it. For those of you who can't see, I've got whisker, stopper, stopper. When there's too much light on this side and this whisker comes in contact with the stopper, it sends a signal to the microprocessor too far, and the algorithm says, okay, wait, is it still touching? Is it still touching? Is it still touching? If so, move out a bit and then resume. So, and that goes for both sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my power. I'm going to press my cell 1 button, or rather my cell 2 button, the select button, the only button on the board, and that will start and stop this. So just to start it, I'm going to press the button, turn on my flashlight, and we're in a fluorescent room right now, fluorescent lighting, and it's facing the light which is in the ceiling, of course. So I'm going to bring in my own light, supercapacitor. I'm going to put light on the left-hand side, and now you see it stops because most of the light is in the middle light sensor. So I'm going to bring light over to the left a bit. I'm going to keep moving it. Oh, we're too far. Algorithm says stop. Okay, try again. Anyway, so I'm going to bring it over this way. When it moves far enough and more light is hitting the middle sensor, it will stop. It hit the stopper, and we'll move it back again. So when it stops dead in its tracks, it means that the most light is hitting the middle of the sensor. So I'll move it again left. keep moving my light source. This one turned out much more nicely than my first version of this. I'm glad that you guys were able to follow along with me. Anyway, that's it. It works perfectly. Exactly how it's programmed. Nice and slow. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed it. The Instructable should be up at Instructables.com soon. My profile is Engineering Shock, one word, so feel free to have a look if you're interested. And thanks for watching, everyone. I hope if you followed on through all 3 videos, I sincerely appreciate it. Take care.